All right, let's dive into a topic that has probably caused a headache or two for pretty much every student and researcher out there. Citations. We're going to put three of the heavyweights, APA, MLA, and IEEE, head-to-head to finally clear up all the confusion. Let's do this.
So, you've been there, right? Staring at your screen, trying to remember, is it a comma here, a page number, a bracket? It can feel like you're just trying to memorize a bunch of random rules. But here's the secret. It is not random at all. Each style has its own logic, its own purpose, and once you get that, everything else just clicks into place.
Exactly. So before we get bogged down in the nitty-gritty of italics and parentheses, we have to understand the why. Each one of these citation styles was built from the ground up with a core philosophy, perfectly tailored for the world it lives in.
The best way to think about it is like this. They're different languages. Seriously. If you're a social scientist, your language is all about what's new, what's current. If you're a literature scholar, you need a language that can pinpoint the exact line in a poem. And if you're an engineer, you need a language that's all about efficiency, no fluff, just the facts. And this slide right here, this is your master key. If you remember this, you've basically cracked the code. APA is author, date. The big question it's always asking is this research recent? MLA is author page. It's all about where exactly can I find this passage? And then you have IEEE, which is purely numerical. It just wants to know which document are we talking about. That's it. Simple, right?
Okay, so with those big ideas in our back pocket, let's see how this all plays out in your actual writing. We're moving from the theory to the practice, starting with those little citations you sprinkle throughout your text. Think of these as little signposts or maybe breadcrumbs. You're just leaving a quick note for your reader that says, hey, this brilliant idea, not mine. I got it from over here, and you're doing it without totally derailing your own sentence.
And here it is. You can literally see those philosophies in action. APA gives you the author and the year. See? Timeliness. MLA gives you the author and the page number. Location, location, location. And IEEE, just a clean, simple number in a bracket. Efficient. Each one is prioritizing what its field cares about most.
Now here's a fun twist. You might think these styles never agree on anything, but you'd be wrong. When a source has 3 or more authors, they all basically shake hands and decide on a shortcut. They all use et al., which is just a fancy Latin way of saying and the rest of the gang. It keeps your paper from getting cluttered, which is something everyone can appreciate.
So, what happens when you're quoting someone word for word? Well, the rules shift just a tiny bit, and it makes perfect sense. APA, which usually just wants the year, now says, okay, for a direct quote, I also need the page number. You'll see that little P there. MLA is like, I'm already on it. Its system is built on page numbers. And good old IEEE, it doesn't change a thing. The number points to the source, and that's all it needs to do.
Okay, so we've left all our little signposts throughout the paper. Now let's follow them to their final destination. That all-important list at the very end where you lay out all your cards and give the full details for every single source. This page is basically the address book for your research. The in-text citation tells you who said something, but this list tells you exactly where to find it. And just a little heads up on the names, APA and IEEE call it a references page, while MLA goes with Works Cited. Same idea, just a different label. All right, let's put a classic APA reference under the microscope. At first glance, yeah, it looks like a whole lot of punctuation. But once we break it down, you'll see how every single piece is there for a reason, all serving that core author-date philosophy. So let's dissect this. Notice the authors? Last name, then just initials. And see that date? It's pushed right up to the front, in parentheses, because, again, for APA, when it was published is a huge deal. The article title is in what's called sentence case, like a normal sentence, but the journal title is italicized and capitalized. And the entire list is organized alphabetically by the author's last name.
Okay, now let's swap that out for an MLA entry for the same kind of source. You can immediately see it has a different vibe, doesn't it? Let's see why.
So what's different here? Well, first off, the author's full first name is spelled out. The article title is now wrapped in quotation marks and uses title case, where all the major words are capitalized. And look at the date. It's buried much later in the citation, no parentheses, because for MLA, the date just isn't the star of the show. But, just like APA, the list is still alphabeticized.
And now, let's look at IEEE. This one is all business. It's compact, it's dense, and it's designed for pure function, which is exactly what an engineer would want. The very first thing you see is that number.
The whole structure here is driven by that need for efficiency. It kicks off with the number in brackets. The authors' names are formatted with initials first. But the real game changer? The order. This list is not alphabetical. Nope, it's numerical. It's organized based on the order that you first mentioned each source in your paper. The first source you cite is 1, the second is 2, and so on. Super logical.
So, after all that, the big question remains, which one should you be using? Well, the good news is, you usually don't have to guess. It almost always comes down to your major, your professor, or the journal you're writing for. Let's wrap this all up in one simple guide.
This right here is the slide to screenshot. This boils everything we've talked about down to its essence. If you're in the social sciences, education, or business, you're almost certainly in APA's author date world. If you're in the humanities, studying literature or art, you're living in MLA's author page territory. And for all you tech wizards in engineering and computer science, the clean numerical system of IEEE is your home base.
And that brings us to one last thing to chew on. We just spent all this time mastering systems that were designed for a world of printed books and journals. But what happens when our sources are living websites that get updated constantly? Will page numbers even make sense anymore? Will the publication date matter as much as the day we actually looked at it? It leaves us with a really fascinating question. What is the future of giving credit where credit is due?